Yo guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, or welcome if you've never been here before. So I've just jumped on today to do my weekly forecast, and this is a forecast for the week commencing the 4th of April and ending on the 8th of April. And just before we get started, I will draw your guys' attention to the written version of this forecast. So if you guys want to check out the written version of this forecast, then I will leave a link to that in the description, and you can reference that if you want. And if you are grateful for this content, guys, then please do like and subscribe, and I'm super grateful for that. So let's get started. Alright, so Nzd Usd, we're literally in the same structure as last week. So if you've seen last week's video, you'll already know what I think of this structure. But what we've basically had is a break of structure to the high here. So that's left behind this high, this low. So what we've got is a clear order block at the low, and that order block has got imbalance just above it. So for me, that's the ideal place for price to pull back into, and then we can look to buy from there. So this week on NU, if we can get that bearish price action to bring us down into here, I'll be happy to look for buys following lower time frame order flow transition down here. Now, what I'm also aware of is that we've got this, which is best seen on the 5-hour, this 5-hour demand. Now, this hasn't been violated yet, so technically price is in this uptrend, and this is our higher low. So within that, if this uptrend will just continue, then the 5-hour demand can easily just hold. So that's why I've got that marked on, because whilst I would like to see it come down here and fill what looks like imbalance on the daily, on the 5-hour, that might not be what happens, and what may happen is we just continue away from this low here. So for me on NU, I'm also interested in buys away from this. Now, what I can see is that, so we actually did tap into it last week, and then we've had this very aggressive price action on the 2-hour, and what it's actually done is broke the structure here. So technically now we do have an entry here, and what we could see is price just respect this reaction and then continue upwards. So for me, we've got this. So there's nothing wrong at all with taking buys out of this 2-hour order block here, which reacted off 5-hour. So I'll be open to that. I'll also be open to price coming deeper into the 5-hour, deeper than it did here, and then continuing from there. But then, like I said, we do have that big order block at the low, which is as of yet unmitigated on the daily. And you could also see that this aggressive move here just grabbed liquidity from above equal highs before they now commit to that shift downwards to take us into this area, which on the daily it is very logical that we are going to come into this area. So NU this week for me, there are a few opportunities. I think a lot of it's just going to come down to what's happening on the lower time frame, on the 1-hour, on the 15-minute. But start of the week, firstly, I'm going to be focused on how price is reacting out of this area here. If it doesn't react from there in a way which provides an opportunity to buy, then I'll still be aware of how it reacts at the 5-hour demand, and again looking for buys. Now, if both of those opportunities are invalidated, possibly we'll get a counter trend sell made available, which we can then take to come down here. And then once we are down here in this daily order block, I will just look for buys out of the daily order block. So that is my view on Nzd Usd this week. Alright, Aud USD. So starting from the daily, AU, very similar again to just what it was last week. So we had a break structure 1, break structure 2. So we know we're in a confirmed bullish trend and a clear bullish bias now on AUD USD. So the question is just where to follow this bullish bias from. Now looking, we've got the daily low down here and the daily high up here. So what we have is this clear extreme order block, very similar to NU. That's got imbalance above it. So for me, if we get back down here, I'm more than happy to look for buys out of there, and that is just buys following the daily order flow, following the daily trend, and we're buying away from this daily order block, which should act as institutional demand to drive price higher to break structure again. Now, what we've also got is this little candle here, which is the one which actually was the last sell volume before the break of structure. Now, I am aware that we've got all this volume down here, which is now trapped, and it may just be quite a significant retracement to come all the way down here. If the institutions are committed to aggressively pushing the price upwards at this point, they might not want to pull price all the way back down here, and that's why I've marked this area on here, because for me that makes sense as an area where the institutions can just trickle price back down to and then just continue with their aggressive move. So we've got this impulse, correction, impulse, but it'll just be a smaller correction. So that's why I've also got this daily base marked on there, and I'm sure if we go through the time frames, we can turn it into an order block that fits the rules. So on the 6 hour, it's the 6 hour impulsive order block, so it's perfectly valid as an order block from a vertex strategy, and for me it would make sense to price to react there. So what we're looking at is either buys out of this area here or buys out of this area here, and if you're into your counter trends, then I don't see why you can't take a counter trend to try and come down here, but for me I'll probably be waiting more just to take these buys because I think they'll be high probability. Alright, so moving on to pound dollar. So pound dollar, so same structure as last week on the daily. We had break structure to the low, break structure to the low, and then we had a break structure to the high. Now, the 4 hour that I was looking at last week, it did just get violated, and to be fair, I made a mistake with the analysis there because I should have been more aware of what was going on the high time frames for daily with 12 hour. But this week I'm aware of that. So this week, what I'm seeing, we've got this breaker structure on to the high, and that breaker structure left behind this bullish order block at the low. Now we have now tapped into that bullish order block, so for me, as soon as market opens, it's fair game for us to continue higher out of this bullish order block at the low. So for me, when the week opens, it's fair game for us to start buying out of this area here at the low, and then we can look to target those higher areas. Now, we have already sort of respected this area, so it's definitely possible now that maybe on the lower time frames we've got some type of confirmation order block, and we can just look to buy out of there, and then we can look to continue following this most recent daily breaker structure. Now, that said, however, and while I do think it's fine to look for buys right now, we are in a bearish trend on the daily, and within that trend there's these two clear order blocks which are unmitigated, which could easily act as institutional supply areas. So for me, whilst I'm anticipating buys this week, I will be looking, and as price gets into here, I would not be surprised at all if we start to see the sell volume coming in. So if we can sell out of here, I'll have to do so, and then the same again, if we do break this area, I'll be looking for sells out of this extreme up here. So that's GU this week. Hopefully get some buys following through with this intent for the start of the week, and then we can see what happens as we're getting into these higher areas, which I do think we'll see institutional supply coming into the market. Alright, euro dollar. So looking at the daily on euro dollar, we had a first break structure, second break structure, so we know we're in a bearish trend on euro dollar. Now, this has been the same for like 3 or 4 weeks now, so sorry if you guys watch this every week. But what I'm expecting is, from a daily perspective, price can come up into this extreme here. This extreme here will act as supply, and then we can continue down away from there. That said, however, we do have another order block lower down, which did actually cause the daily break, and it's also a 4-hour order block. So, there's this order block here is valid on quite a few time frames. If you flick from 4-hour to 12-hour, and it's got this clear refinement, which is where the imbalance starts. So for me, this is a fine order block for sales also. So what I'll be looking at on euro dollar this week is basically we're coming back up into this area here, and then once we get into this area here, we can look for sells. If we don't get that, if we do just continue through it, that's absolutely fine. We've got an explanation for that, and that is because we were coming up to the daily extreme order block. So for me, we're expecting this bullish move, and then we're going to see whether we're going to sell out of here or out of here, or maybe we'll see a full reversal. But right now, I will be expecting supply from this area or this area. Now, within that thesis, what I can see is, and this is only minor structure and order flow right now, but what we've got is this clear, impulsive, aggressive move. Now, we've still not, for me, tapped into our POI, so we still need to continue upwards. So if we're just looking at the way that this structure has developed, we mitigated and went off the POI that I spoke about, I think, last week or the week before. Now we've had this aggressive move up, and that's left behind this imbalance and this whole order block here. So for me, I'll be happy to look for buys following my entry model out of this area, probably out of some type of refinement, and then we can look to take that up here to mitigate this. So that's EU this week. We can look for these buys in the short term, and then we'll have to be ready to, take profits when we do start getting up here, and then we can look to sell from this area, and the same can be said for the top more extreme area on the daily. Alright, so moving on to Euro Pound. So Euro Pound, now basically the last few weeks I've been looking at a bearish thesis. Now looking at the weekly price action, we've still got this high here, which is fully intact, and we still have our bearish directional bias. So for me, I am just expecting now that on the hourly structures, we're going to see price start to transition into a bearish structure, bearish order flow, and then that bearish order flow, bearish structure on the hourly time frames will follow through to eventually break structure again on the weekly. And that's what I'm seeing on the Euro Pound based on the weekly time frame. Now, that said, however, what we do have is counter trend basically on the daily. What we've got is two breaks of structure. So whilst we have that whole bearish situation on the weekly, we do have a bullish situation on the daily. So what I'm going to be looking at now coming into next week is, since we're rejecting from the high, I'll be happy to take sells on the hourly structures away from the weekly, anticipating that the daily won't hold because the weekly takes priority. So for me, I will be happy to take those sells on the hourly structures. However, on the daily, we are in a bullish structure and we can't ignore that, and it would be silly to ignore that. So I am going to open myself up to also be aware of what can happen on the daily time frame. So on the daily, we've got this clear order block here, and that is a bullish order block. So for me, even within the thesis where, we come down and we end up breaking the weekly structure again, I do think we'll see some type of reaction from this order block, and that's why I've marked the path out like this. So what I'm anticipating is that as we do get into this area on the daily, we'll have some type of significant reaction, and then that reaction will basically either push through to break the weekly structure to the high and to continue the daily bullish structure, or we'll get the reaction and then the daily will fail and the weekly bias will continue. So for me, either of these two possibilities are basically valid, and I do think that one of these is going to happen this week. So what I'm going to be thinking with Euro Pound, I'm going to be open to taking buys out of this area, and I'm also going to be open to taking sells out of hourly structures. So for example, this 4-hour structure up here, start of the week, if we come up into there, then I'll be interested in taking sells, and then we can follow through with the weekly bias. So basically, Euro Pound, we're the higher time frame, we're in the sell bias, and we can follow sells from the hourly time frames. But on the daily, we do need to be aware of that bullish structure. And if we do see the lower time frame bullish order flow, then no reason why we can't buy out of this daily order block. So that is Euro Pound. And guys, this is all written down. So if there's anything that's not clear to you guys, or if you've got any questions, then it is going to be written down in the written version of the analysis. Also, you can always leave a comment if you've got any questions. Now, final pair, pound yen. So pound yen, it's the same as the last 2 weeks, to be fair. We've had the first break structure, second break structure. So now what we've got is this whole leg of price action. Now that leg originated from this low down here, so we've got our extreme order block there. So for me, if price is going to continue bearish now, I'll expect it to continue bearish and get into this area, and then when we do get down there, we can look for them longer term buys for a swing position. and that will be buys following the daily structure. Now, what I also see is that we have this sell volume here. Now, for me, this is the cleaner one down here. That's one that you'd like to see more. However, it is a very aggressive move what we've seen upwards, so we may not retrace all the way back down here if the institutions don't want to do that. So that's why I've got this area here as well. It's similar to how it is on AU. So for me, if we do get into this area also, then I will be open to a structural transition, which will then continue a bullish price action on this time frame. So either of these two areas, basically, I'm looking for buys after a structural transition on my entry time frames. Now, what I am aware of, and I will share this one, so this is just a shorter term opportunity that I've marked out, and I am happy to take this trade myself if I can get involved in it on Monday. So we'll see what happens. But what we've basically now had is price has reversed after reaching a new high. The 4-hour structure broke, the 1-hour structure's broken twice. So at this point on the 1-hour, we've got a very clear bearish bias, and we've got a supply zone here which did have imbalance, and that's now been mitigated. So following on from that, what I'm expecting now is for price to just start with this lower time frame bearish order flow, and then to take us down into these daily areas which I've just spoke about. So that is a very significant move on the pound yen counter trend, but 300 pips. So if I can get into that, I'll be super happy with that, and I do think that's a valid trading opportunity. So this week, pound yen, we've got the sell following the hourly here, and then we've got buys from the two daily high time frame structures, points of interest, should I say. So guys, thank you very much for watching today, and I hope that this has given you value. If you have got value out of it, then please subscribe to the channel, because I'll be super grateful for that. I hope you guys all have a safe trading week, stick to your trading plans, and stick to your risk management. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Cheers.